every week on game night on 97.3 ESPN, where I'm the host of 6 to 7. Not right now because I'm hosting for Mike Gill. But Dave Weinberg joins us for a Weinberg Wednesday each and every week, talk Eagles and other things going around in the sports world. He joins us today on a Thursday, day later. But it's actually almost better that he joins us a day later because of some of the Eagles news that's dropping as Dave joins us now on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how's Thursday treating you?
Pretty well, Josh. Just left the beach and getting ready for another Labor Day weekend, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's Labor Day weekend because on my way into work this morning, I got locked into the lockjam with the people coming to the shore. So hopefully it's a good...
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's always the case. That's a shame because summer went way too fast this year, I thought.
Hopefully,
as it always does, though.
Hopefully the combination of people coming down to the shore with them reopening for indoor dining is a good boom for the local economy. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hoping so. Yeah, the restaurants really need it. I mean, they had a pretty good summer considering all the obstacles they faced. But, yeah, it'd be nice to finally get that indoor dining back. Yeah, you're right there.
Absolutely. So, Dave, some of this Eagles news has just been dropping this afternoon. I'd love to get your perspective on it because, I'm looking at the initial list of guys the Eagles have waived here. And all I can help but think about is how different would some of these decisions be if there was actually a preseason for some of these guys like, the Michael Warrens and the Adrian Killens and some of these other guys, if they actually had a preseason, how different some of these decisions would be.
Yeah, you're right there. That's always been the case with the preseason. You usually get one or two guys that really make the most of that opportunity. Even Jim Schwartz alluded to it yesterday that the preseason made it really difficult for them to evaluate guys, the lack of a preseason, because they didn't get a chance to show what they can do. And that's especially true with the running backs. I mean, you've seen it over the years where guys like Corey Clement have taken the bull by the horns when they get the opportunity and, wind up burning a roster spot. Yeah, it's really a shame. Hopefully those guys will land on the practice squad. The squad's been expanded to 16 players this year, so maybe that gives them a little more leeway when it comes to sticking around for a little bit.
Is there anyone that surprises you more than, say, another player that got cut already?
Maybe Deontay Burnett, the wide receiver. He had a pretty good camp from what I understand, and given the uncertain status of Jalen Reagor, at least for the beginning of the season, I thought he might be a guy that would stick around. And I'm surprised they only kept the three running backs basically. So, yeah, I thought maybe Elijah Holyfield would stick, or like you said, either Killen or Warren maybe. But I think there's probably opportunities down the road for those guys. Like I said, when injuries always happen in the NFL, the Eagles have already had their share. So I think those guys, assuming they can stay on the practice squad, they'll get their chances down the road.
Just a little conjecture, but considering that they just waived 4 wide receivers, is there a possibility that we could maybe see Alshon Jeffery sooner than we expected then?
That's a possibility. I mean, Doug's been kind of evasive when discussing. I mean, he keeps saying that he's making progress. He's doing better, but I don't think they're in any hurry to rush him back. They're definitely not going to bring him back before he's ready. And that little Frank sprain that he suffered, that's a really tricky injury, especially for guys like wide receivers, running backs who depend on their feet more than anybody else, really. And it's I think they're going to ease him back. I wouldn't expect him back for like the first couple of weeks, though.
I want to get your thoughts on this offensive line because this Jason Peters thing is, a little crazy. Here you have a left tackle, a Hall of Famer, yet Mailata and Matt Pryor specifically are the names that are being thrown into the mix for the left tackle position. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I'm not quite getting their thinking there. I mean, Doug kind of tried to explain it. He didn't want to upset two positions. But the fact that Matt Pryor played right guard when Brandon Brooks was hurt last year, did a fairly decent job. You have Jason Peters, like you said, a Hall of Fame left tackle. Granted, he's probably not at that level anymore, but I think he's still better than say Matt Pryor, who's never played left tackle really in his life in the NFL anyway. So I think the easier move would have been to just put Matt back there. But Doug kind of talked about the lack of chemistry. Peters is kind of like entrenched at right guard next to Kelsey and Lane Johnson whenever he gets back, but. Honestly, I'm not buying it. I mean, I think that the better move, like I said, would have been to just move Jason back to left tackle, not give him any more money, but I just move him back to left tackle and put Matt in at right guard.
Could this also open the door, Dave, for them to maybe go and get somebody who is among some of these roster cuts? Because we know in the past the Eagles have, kind of played their cards tight to the vest, waited for someone to get waived, and then snagged them off the line? Could there maybe be a free agent offensive lineman that ends up sliding into one of these slots?
It's a possibility, but I wouldn't count on it. I mean, Doug he's a big believer in developing that cohesiveness on the offensive front, and to bring a guy back, in here without any work with the starters, that's going to be a really tough assignment for them to expect them to come right in. Maybe pick one up and maybe have him, he's in after a couple of weeks, but I think what you see now is what they're going to go with for at least the opener at Washington and possibly the home opener against the Rams.
I want to switch to the defense. I got a couple questions on two secondary pieces. So Will Parks goes down. I want to get your thoughts on that. And Sidney Jones as well, because I question if he's even going to be on this football team.
That's a legitimate question. Sidney hasn't done anything to earn the right, really, to stick around. I mean, he is a second-round pick, and teams don't usually give up on those guys very easily. But, he's been hurt since he's been here. It's been really inconsistent. Missed significant practice time this training camp. And, I think his job might actually be in jeopardy. You're right. Will Parks is a loss. He was going to be their third safety, and that's a position that they really need some depth whenever they can get it, and Will would have given him that. So they're going to have a tough time. Replacing him, I think.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. You can check out his extra point columns over at 97.3ESPN.com. Following up on that question about the secondary, I wonder what happens to Rasul Douglas in all this, because before training camp, the theory was they'll keep Sidney as a backup and maybe they'll trade Rasul. Now it seems to have inverted. Now they might keep Rasul and they might trade Sidney. So it can't be just the injury issue with Sidney. There's got to be something that Rasul did in camp, right?
Yeah, I think Rasul kind of. I think he improved his status during training camp. There's a lot of conjecture about his future here. I thought they would have considered moving him to safety, given his size and his physicality, the way he plays the position. It just doesn't seem like he has the speed to really run with wide receivers. But he really has a nose for the football. He's pretty aggressive. I was kind of surprised that they moved Mills over to safety instead of Rasul. But I thought he had a pretty solid camp from what the coaches were saying. And as we just said, Sidney didn't have the best training camp. And I think he's kind of I think he might be on the, I don't want to say in the doghouse, but I think they're kind of frustrated with his lack of progress. Just conjecture on my part. But Sidney should have been further along than he is now, and I think maybe they're getting tired of waiting.
You mentioned the name Jim Schwartz earlier. We know how outspoken he has been about the fact that he needs guys to be able to do certain jobs on Sunday, play certain roles, and you have to think, with Jim Schwartz, with the voice that he has in that organization, how much he's watching these guys from day to day, and maybe for his part, he's kind of just saying enough is enough.
It could be, but I mean, depth is a big factor with Jim, and he's done a very good job of taking what he has and making the most out of it. You saw in the last 2 years, especially with all the injuries that he had in the secondary, taking guys off the street like Caron LeBlanc and putting them in there. And he does a very good job of designing schemes to maximize those guys' strengths. And I guess if they keep Sidney around, then he'll try to find a way to find a way to put him out there and take advantage of what he does best. What that is, I don't know at the moment, but if anybody could do it, it'll be Jim Schwartz.
Do you think the Eagles should be concerned at this point with all these injuries, or do you think that they feel they have enough still to be able to at least maybe get through the first 4 weeks of the season until they see someone like Jalen Reagor come back? And we don't really have much of an update on Hargrave, which was a big acquisition. So do you think that they should be concerned with where they're at in terms of health?
Yeah, I do. But again, I mean, they've proven that they don't let injuries stop them. They've repeatedly found a way to overcome that stuff, even in the Super Bowl year when they had so many guys go down, including Carson and Jason Peters. But everybody, it's always a next man up mentality. But they do have a right to be concerned. I think Brandon Brooks was the big loss to me. I mean, he was the best player on that offensive line, in my opinion, and to lose him for the entire season a big blow. I guess the only bright spot of it was that it happened early enough where they could, replace him or try to replace him as quickly as possible. Give that guy an opportunity, Jason Peters, to acclimate himself to that job. But it's going to be a challenge for them, I think, even for the first couple games without some of those guys.
Speaking of that, it's another thing Jim Schwartz was saying yesterday. I thought was very, very great, honest answer. Was he expects the NFL season to be a little sloppy without the preseason, without the offseason. He's saying, listen, he's basically expecting there not to be some aesthetically good football, and I think that it'll be interesting to see how teams weather those first couple weeks of poor play at times.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Without the lack of the preseason, those guys didn't get a chance to go against other teams, even with no inter-squad scrimmages. That kind of get a chance to just hit another player from another team, and not to have that, and to have kind of no off season, so to speak, no OTAs, no mini camps. Those guys basically had to hit the ground running like a month ago, and there's bound to be some rust. I think there's bound to be some sloppy play, and it'll be interesting to see which teams are able to overcome that the fastest.
Dave, I wanted to flip it over to your very, very insightful extra points column on the website 973ESPN.com about Lamanna's loss. And I think that you bring up a very, very important conversation in sports, especially when it comes to sports like boxing and also MMA, and that is judging. And, maybe this is a naive thought from me, so if it is, let me know. But I feel like the fact that it's 2020 and we still can have these egregious issues with judging in terms of the fight game is honestly an embarrassment.
Yeah, it is, but it's always been a part of boxing. As long as there's going to be subjective judging, it's going to be a tough. They tried to develop some clear and concise standards to look for judges to look for when they're scoring a fight. I think one of the big problems is that those guys are stationary. I think it would go a long way to helping the sport if they rotate those guys in. Because I remember years ago when Evander Holyfield fought Lennox Lewis, and an Atlantic City judge named Eugenia Williams was judging the fight at Madison Square Garden, and everybody was in an uproar because she scored the fight for Holyfield when it looked like Lewis clearly had won. And she explained that her view was obstructed through most of the fight. Unlike the other two judges, she had photographers in her way. I think there was like a ring post that was obstructing her view. One of the fighters was had their back to her most of the rounds, and it was a really tough job. I think and like I said, the best way to do it is don't leave that judge in one spot for the entire fight. Let them rotate every round, and so they can get a different vantage point of what they're saying in the ring.
What about the possibility of having the judge it off of maybe like a Raw TV feed?
It's a possibility. I mean, I think maybe as an addition to what they see live. I was actually part of an experiment with an MMA show a couple of years ago where they invited me to be a judge, and what they did was they employed an unofficial judge. They employed 3 judges at ringside and their cage side, and they had one guy in the back room watching on a TV monitor, and they counted his scores as well as the guys at the cage. And I had the opportunity of scoring both rounds next to the cage and in front of the monitor. And I think that might be the way to go. Just add another judge to watch from a monitor and lend his viewpoint to the scoring as well.
I know the importance of having an odd number of judges for a lot of scoring purposes. So if you were to expand it from 3 judges, would you think that maybe like expanding the number of judges to 5 could be an option then?
Yeah, that would probably go a long way towards avoiding like draws and stuff like that. I'm a big believer when it comes to scoring, because it's just my personal belief that there should never be like an even round. You should never score a fight 10-10. Around 10-10. One guy had to have the advantage for 30 seconds or a minute or what have you. And I think if they just go by that 10-9, 10-8 for a knockdown, what have you, I think that might go a long way toward helping the sport as well.
Would it also help if maybe we, worked with maybe changing how these fights are ruled? Because sometimes I'm watching these MMA fights and I'm thinking, am I watching the same fight as this judge? And I know how many times it happens in boxing too, where I'm listening to a guy who's a former boxer, like an Andre Ward, for example, and he'll be on the television broadcast and he'll say that this judge didn't see the same fight I did. I'm telling you as somebody who was in those rings that, this person is not even looking at the right thing. So is there a possibility that maybe also there maybe needs to come on the athletic commissions to maybe, change some of the instructions for the judges?
Possibility. I think one thing that might happen, and I know it's going to probably be a little unexpected, but years ago you had 3 judges at ringside scoring, and the referee also had a scorecard. The referee also scored the round, and no one is closer to the fighters during a fight than the referee. So maybe that would be a possibility. Maybe have that guy also keeping score as he's supervising inside the ring, and maybe that would help.
Maybe that would be the 5th judge then. Maybe it's the 3 judges ringside, the
Correct.
one guy on the monitor, and the 5th one could be the official in the ring itself.
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, that might be a good idea.
There you go, Dave. Now I'm leaving you to fix the rest of the world's problems, okay?
There you go.
He's Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, Boxing Hall of Fame writer. Check out his article right now, his extra points about Thomas Lamana's loss at 97.3ESPN.com, because the article is much more about Lamana than it is about the state of boxing as well. Dave, always appreciate the time, and next week we'll get back to the Weinberg Wednesday schedule.
I'm looking forward to it. Enjoy Labor Day weekend, guys. Thanks.